Welcome, everyone, to the podcast Revenue Checkpoint, where we discuss how to rescue revenue. Welcome, Jane. So nice to have you as part of the podcast today. Jane, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Jane Koltsova. I am currently a senior director at Medidata, in charge of financial operations as well as order-to-cash transformation. And a little bit of my background, I was at E&Y for a minute at first, then at Salesforce for a decade, and I've been at PagerDuty for about 2.5 years running order-to-cash. So lots of experience in this space.
Now, this is going to be a very, very nice discussion, Jane, especially with your background in the whole go-to revenue, I would say, not just the cash. So thank you. Thank you for joining the podcast. Let's kick it off with the first question. Do you believe there's revenue leakage happening in the subscription business today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is something that is very common. Any company with complicated processes, front, back end, they're going to have issues. And I do find that there are common causes to this. You'll hear this a couple of times from me, hopefully not too many, but first and foremost, it's manual processes, right? Anytime you've got people editing Excel, you're going to have issues. And the more complicated the process, especially within the quoting motion, the more likely you're going to have missed revenue within said process. In addition, of course, to quoting, you've got potentially an ability to monetize appropriately because your product SKUs are inflexible or it's really difficult to add them to an order form. This is really true, and I see this time and time again, is when dealing with consumption-based products. If you can't track usage, if you can't bill for it appropriately, you can't monetize it, revenue by definition will be lost. The other broad bucket is errors, right? You can have billing errors, undercharging, overcharging that then needs to be reversed, misapplied discounts, outdating pricing, kind of all contribute to this. So yes, I absolutely think there's revenue leakage happening.
I'm so excited with the richness of information that you have to share. This is so good. If I would ask you, where do you see it happen the most in your complete quote-to-cash cycle? What would your answer be?
Yeah, in my experience, it's really it's a tie, right? It's quoting in the CPQ motion as well as in billing. I think the rest of that quote-to-cash life cycle really feeds off of those 2 points in time. And kind of follows. But if you've got an issue in quoting or in billing, you're going to have trouble.
So you have shared some part of it. It would be nice to elaborate a little bit more on why the leakage happens. If you can give top 5 reasons why the leakages happen.
Yeah, I've certainly talked about the first one, which is that those manual processes with errors. But I think to go a couple steps deeper, it's really silos within the lead to cash organizations. Misalignment simply because people are not quite able to break down those silos and have those rich conversations. It could be because sales strategy is not being fully supported by back-end systems. This I've seen a few times, and this is especially true in high growth companies. You're moving fast. You really want to move forward with an offering, and then your back-end systems just can't quite keep up. That's a big one. I mentioned under monetization due to inability to track or lack of visibility to an end user. You end up slowing down the process from that perspective. And there's one I haven't mentioned yet, and that's poor collection practices. I really, truly believe that no matter how much revenue a company books, no matter how fast you sell, no matter how good your product is, if your collections are inefficient, you're going to just have a major drag on the overall results.
This is very informative. What I see is there are multiple organization where it spans, multiple probably even back-end systems where this spans, in multiple finance areas and revenue operations area where it also spans. So who should own it? Who should be owning, waking up every day in the morning, thinking about is there a leakage happening? Do I need to do something about it?
Yeah. And, I think accountability is really, really important. And I'm going to give you two answers because I do think it depends sometimes on the company as well. I think first and foremost, it's sales strategy. The SKU compatibility, company maximizing revenue. I think it's really key from that perspective. You see the beginning of the funnel within the sales strategy side. On the other end, of course, it's order to cash. So whoever's running that back end, these folks are the ones who have the best knowledge of the business overall, maybe not the, not the details over starting from the beginning, but they're also the ones who will be the ones receiving a question from the CFO, who will come over and say, hey, are you sure there isn't a bit more somewhere? I've got an expectation for a number and it feels like we're light. And so if we're talking about waking up in the morning and thinking about this, I do think order to cash folks should have this top of mind.
So generally, it's intriguing to see these days, many times the CIO or the IT organization rolling into the finance organization as well. Do you see that as potentially the reason why it's coming in, because both of the organization need to worry about it and hence they're aligning it as well because IT basically automates all different processes that finance and the rest of the organization also needs to perform.
Yeah, I think that absolutely makes sense to me, that having the closeness of the business, meaning sales, for example, to IT doesn't make a lot of sense, but having that close moment of understanding of what the requirements are and where we're going between the CIO organization and the CFO organization is absolutely critical. And those two organizations, I think, actually should be going to battle together sometimes against whatever the sales org wants to do. If they are on the same page, it's just going to be a huge multiplier from this perspective.
Thank you for sharing. Let's up level a little bit. Is revenue leakage, detecting the leakage, even a priority for the large subscription organizations out there?
I think potentially there are lots of things to think about. It might not be the first thing on people's minds, especially if there's growth. If the company is growing, you are not looking for leakage. You're looking to capture as much as you can of what's in front of you. But if that growth slows down, if the company is starting to look for different revenue tiers and finding those extra dollars, everybody starts looking. And that's when, you end up with more complicated processes to create and capture the revenue that all of a sudden you're finding you've been leaking this entire time. In a perfect world, you as in the capital U, the company would review the overall system when this happens and really look at which parts of the systemic underlying processes can be re-implemented natively, not build on top of, but rebuild underneath. It is tough to get buy-in because you find this at the time of slowing growth. So there's less money to go around unless you can measure it. And the moment that you can measure it, all of a sudden you've got an ROI conversation going. So it can become a priority if certain things fall into place, specifically in my opinion, when the growth slows.
Today's market, things are getting a little bit more stricter about the rule of 42. So I believe some of that has started happening, especially for the companies that are going through that maturity curve of they are somewhere around a couple of $100 million minimum of revenue or $1 billion of revenue, even more in this space. As you are saying, expansion becomes more challenging and growth can not be the only way to hit the rule of 40. Right. So margin becomes critical. That's what I was seeing out there too, as people have started somewhat worrying about it and making it a priority. That's how I'm experiencing it.
Yep.
Well, in my conversation with large organizations, the first response about revenue leakage is denial, especially because people are looking at, oh, I've built this, it cannot happen here. What are the core metrics that companies should look at to improve profitability through reducing revenue leakage?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think if you don't have an analytical tool that specializes in detection of revenue leakage, you end up defaulting to things like MRR over time. Maybe it's billing error rate. You have some of these high level views that something might potentially be wrong. If you have if you have a tip off for a specific product or specific selling motion where you have leakage, you start digging into that product. But metrics, I think, especially for SaaS companies, it's MRR. That's where you see the blip. It should be flat. Is it falling? Are there pieces dropping out? So it becomes really a little bit of a blunt instrument. Of course, if you don't have an analytical tool able to really pinpoint.
So coming to the tools, what are some of the key methodologies or tools you have seen that work best for detecting revenue leakage in subscription space?
Well, this is one of those moments where I have not had a lot of opportunity to look into those tools per se, but I hear you've got a company that you're running with some chops in this particular area. For me, it's really about it's the combination of BI, AI, as well as business process knowledge, right? It's not just a tool. It can't be simply a push of a button. AI and BI are only as good as the humans who are asking questions. And in addition to that, from a tool perspective, if you've got a CFO or maybe even a CRO who can push for action, this is really when it becomes really, really powerful. The hard point, of course, is if you, as you said earlier, folks are denying that there is revenue leakage out there, it's tough to get budget. It's tough to get ROI because you don't know what it will be once you do find it. And this is where you've got a little bit of a catch-22. But again, if the specialization, the tools that are able to look at unstructured data and unearth, insights that humans can't, that's where we really need to go and combine that with expectation and knowledge of the business.
Absolutely. You need a combination of analytics, artificial intelligence, and domain expertise built into that artificial intelligence or human intelligence combination of that to unearth what's happening wrong. How is it deviating from best processes or matrices, and how you're performing against how you should be performing, what you know versus what you don't know that you don't know. So it is that challenge that the industry is facing. Hopefully, people get ahead of this curve soon. So in the meantime, what do you suggest? What are the steps that you would like the subscription companies take to safeguard against the leakage?
Yeah, absolutely. Where I started from is where my recommendation is here, and that's to reduce manual processes in all aspects, right? Guard against manual errors. It's really, really important. But in addition to that, I think somebody with the knowledge of the business should be doing an end-to-end review of business practices and workflows. This is really powerful, especially if you're including interviews with a broader group, product, business application, maybe the collectors. These leakage issues are, in my experience, they're siloed. And sometimes, unless you connect a really broad set of dots, you can't unearth the actual issue. It's just going to be kind of nagging in the back of your head, thinking about something's not quite right, but what is it? So I do think those kinds of interviews are really, really important, and putting things together, breaking down silos. But on the other side, you've got FP&A potentially, right? It's a group of folks who are playing a really large role in searching for anomalies, right? You would think, again, with a run rate business with SaaS, everything is just ratable. This should be very easy. We all know, of course, that that's not the case. So they're cutting data into various slices and dices. And in theory, if strong set of expectations is set at a really granular level, you should be able to see where those blips are faster versus slower. And to me, that's a secondary mitigating safeguard there as well. All of this takes time. Setting up, the interviews that I talked about, or getting granular with FP&A takes time and effort. So it's all about priorities. So as you mentioned earlier, the tools that are out there, if it's the right call for the company to get one or two of those and plug them in, we should absolutely use them, because at the end of the day, I think AI, BI in conjunction with all the work that I just mentioned is really where we're going as far as being able to get real ROI on all of that work.
Basically, what you're saying is combining the tooling with the human intelligence of the business operation and that particular domain's experience built into a single platform will be very useful. I have a question, which is coming from what I've heard in the market. So want to get your perspective on this. Can a billing system or a BI tool alone do a comprehensive job in detecting revenue leakage? Or does it need a system designed to detect a leakage, revenue leakage in the subscription space? What are your thoughts?
I'm a big fan of a comprehensive platform, that does that big chunk of any process, an ERP or a CPQ billing revenue platform that combines everything together. But I do think that certain things should be left to a specialized tool. The core competency of a BI tool or a billing system, it doesn't quite get to the granularity and the analytical prowess that a specialized tool can get into. At the end of the day, what you're looking for is near instantaneous or proactive insights, right? And the ERPs, the BIs, the billing systems really are doing the day-to-day work. My thought is that the tool should really sit on top of that entire end-to-end process and look at that unstructured data, and then help people make decisions, right? It's all about pointed knowledge from other sources. It's all about identifying the most impactful spots where the company can plug those revenue leaks. So I'm a fan of having one comprehensive tool in place. I really think that for something like this, specialization really matters.
Thank you for the discussion and your insights, Jane. Very useful. I believe our audience will love this. How about we change to rapid fire questions? I'll ask some quick questions to you with some quick answers, if you can give to it. So is that okay? Should we?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, well, first one. Can you give me one revenue leakage myth that needs to be busted?
Oh yeah, I feel fairly passionately about this one. It's the fact that back office is the issue when it comes to revenue leakage. Definitely a pet peeve. Anything touching revenue needs to be looked at truly with an end-to-end lens. So this is not a back office only problem.
Awesome. What's worse, revenue leakage from billing errors or revenue leakage from contract management?
I think contract management, and specifically mismanagement of the contracts, is really the tougher piece, because if you have an issue, it is a lot harder to quantify it, bring out the ROI, etc. I think billing errors coming from a platform, you have a little bit more tooling around it.
Thank you. One metric every subscription business must track for revenue leakage.
This was a hard one. It's tough to pick one, and especially I think this matters for various companies, but I think it's as basic as MRR. Truly, it's that monthly run rate. If you start to see blips, something's wrong. Start digging.
Good point. That's where the revenue is. What's the biggest blind spot in revenue leakage detection?
It's the manual processes. We're kind of where we started. If you have those, it's where you're going to have blind spots, because that's the definition of a manual process.
Okay. Last question, a fun one. If revenue leakage was a supervillain, what would its name be?
I am the least creative person out there. So I went to ChatGPT and had one of the most nerdy conversations I've had yet with that particular tool, and came up with something called Revenue Phantom, the silent skimmer. Got to have a pun or two, but that's where we are.
Ooh, nice one. Well, thank you, Jane, for your time. This was amazing, and I'm sure our audience is going to love it. Thanks for joining. Looking forward to collaborating more with you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invite. This has been a fun conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jane. Bye.